What's up? Happy Friday. Back again. Just gonna dive right in and keep moving. Um, so in between the last time and now, I was able to get the action working to filter these categories. So the first thing I'll do today is show that. But instead of walking through all the steps and building it live, I'm just gonna show what I did because really it's just adding an action and setting some values. And I thought if this makes sense and goes well, maybe I'll do some more of that where I finish stuff in between and then show it if it makes sense. I'll try to show as much as I can, but like for this one, I was modifying a very specific part of JavaScript for a custom action. So it's not like broadly relevant. So I just got it done and now I'll walk through what it is here. And in the future, this is in the Airtable pattern now. So when you pull that pattern in, you can just use this action. But what we've got, if I pull it up, so this is the current build. If I click on these now, it filters them. And right now, when I click off them, you can see it takes a second to filter back. And actually, it's going slow again, so I'll refresh because it wasn't going slow a second ago. So maybe it actually has to do with my live stream. Let me just refresh this and start clean. But yeah, I feel like I work on this and it's fine, and then I start streaming and it's starts loading slowly and stuff like that. Makes sense because I'm streaming. Yeah, see something happened there. I said it was waiting. Kill page or wait. That's very interesting. You know, I'm actually gonna just kill this tab. Sometimes the tabs themselves get jammed up. Maybe this tab was jammed up though, because what is going on? There we go. And then I'm just gonna live view again. Ooh, I closed an extra tab that was open just now and everything sped back up. So let's hope that was the problem. All right, so here's the builder view. I'll click a filter and then you'll see a filter. And when I click off the filter, you'll see that's the one thing I still need to work on. It's slow to load back in these the cards, and I know the reason and I know how to fix it, but I just didn't do it yet. So that's pretty fast when you initially click one. And then when you click off, there's this delay, and then they pop in. And so it's more noticeable. I mean, that was obviously really noticeable, but like websites, which has a decent amount in its category, or if I had like a couple categories selected or whatever, you know, then, well, I was trying to do it quickly, but sometimes it pops them on and they're like there's like a couple visible, but gaps. So anyway, the reason that's happening is because each time I choose a filter, I'm refreshing all the objects in here, and there's 300 software, 300 tools in this list that are all on the screen right now. So I did a test where I limited this this list to 100 and to 10, and it significantly improves that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set something up to hide and show them instead of like repainting the screen each time. But that's also super specific and not a major thing. Most of the time, if you were doing this, like I'll make the action do it the way I'm gonna ultimately make it, so you wouldn't have to care about this. But most of the time, you wouldn't have this many records on a page, and maybe it's even a good time to mention. Like I know on my personal roadmap for this project that pretty soon after I finish converting it to Builder, I'm gonna convert it again to where it syncs the Airtable data into a Builder collection, as opposed to querying the Airtable API all the time. Because if I do that newer method, then I can take advantage of a lot of what Builder does with caching, and it'll be a better experience. But I'm not going to do that off the bat because that's like an advanced use case. It's kind of like a step two. I'm just doing it in steps. So when you first do a site, when I first had the no code list, when it was 20 tools or 50 tools, that's not an issue at all. I pull from Airtable, no problem. It only starts to be an issue, I would say, my guess is when it's around like 500 tools. So right now, like today, when I do I'll put 4 tools live later today. That's when we're officially going to cross 300. So I'll have like 302 at the end of that. So I've got a little time, but point being, I'm working with an abnormally large data set. So these things that are happening right now that I have to fix are not average. Usually you'd be good to go just using this action. But anyway, let me show you the action. So a couple of things are going on. The first thing is we have this list of categories. And then when you click a category on or off, we want to filter this main list of cards by this list of categories, but only the categories that are selected. And so what I mean is if animation is selected, I'm filtering by animation. But if animation and blockchain are selected, I'm filtering this set of data, which is an array, by this set of data, which is an array. So to start this, I used a pattern that Dorian just made, and I actually converted it manually. Otherwise, I would have shown bringing the pattern in, but we did that in like the new builder environment that's like the dev environment. So I couldn't import it. So I just copied it into this project, but I took his action, and then what his action does is let me pull it up and kind of show it. It'll take an array to start with, which in this case is the software list, and then you set a value for one of the fields in that array, and then it takes an array to filter with, and you set a value for one of those fields. And what it'll do, and then you can choose whether to keep the matches or keep only the non-matches. But basically the idea is you take an array, you set the field, and then you take another array, you set that field, and it'll compare those fields. And this works, except that in no code list case, so let me just show you how this is set up. So this array, each one of these is name APIs, or it's value APIs, value adds, value animation. So when I tell it use the categories array and use the field value, it's really easy. It's going to know to filter, in this case, by animation and blockchain. In this case, I have values for like image, name, excerpt, website, those kind of things. Any of those would easily filter on, but the categories is an array inside of an array. So that's why I had to modify this function. So these categories, instead of being category equals blockchain, it's like category equals an array value blockchain. And the reason is because some of them could have multiple categories. So like, just to show quick, it takes a second. That's weird. Oh, there it goes. So like this one, database and data and databases is one category, integrations is another. So the value of categories is array, value, data and databases, comma, value, integrations. All that is to say, I think I clicked on that. Let's go into the page. All that is to say, I had to modify the function a little bit, and I did. And so now it just works. So I set all the software as the first starting array, and I set categories as the field I want to test against. And then the filter array, I set all the categories, and I set value as the field. And then what I do for categories, this is kind of like a secret builder trick that I only know because I work at Builder, but it'll be like there'll be a whole interface built around this stuff, and it's super powerful. But there's a path down here. So in order to filter by the categories, but only the ones that are selected, I have a path down here that says in brackets, it says state equals selected. And what that is I'm telling it to get the value of this list of rows categories, but only where the row has a variable on it of state and where that variable state equals selected. And so that's super powerful because I don't have to do any special thing to know which ones are selected. So in real time, whenever this runs, it's just going to find the selected values in that list. And the way that selected variable works, when we set this up originally, this category name, we have these states. So, sorry, I got to go back and it's going to be slow. So when you click on, so it's a default state when you come to the page, and when you click on a category, it gets a selected state. And if you click on it again when it's selected, it goes back to a default state. And the reason we made the states was for the visuals to show either the plus icon like this, the minus icon, the check So this is a selected state, it gets the check, and then when you hover over, it gets an X, whereas this is the default state, it's got nothing, and then when you hover over, it gets a plus. I think. Oh, it's still loading these in. That's crazy. Yeah, I'll still figure out, but something's up with this, I think. Although when I'm not live streaming, it's not slow. So maybe something's not up, but I'll double check and make sure that's still good. What I'm gonna do before this builder version goes live is I'm not gonna display 300 records on the homepage. It's gonna be something like featured or recently added or something, and then there'll be another way to get into all the records. So I won't actually have this problem in the live version. Anyway, when I am doing these categories and you select the state, I'm running an action. So when you first click it, it sets the state selected and it does the visual stuff. But at the end, it sets a variable state as selected. And I mentioned when we set this up, it was a couple times ago, but I knew that we were gonna have to use this variable, so I just put it in there. But I could use it for other things too. It always gives me a way to like find the state of this row. So that's why I put it in there, but here's where I'm using it. So I set that there, and then when I set state default, it does the same thing, but it sets state equals default. And that could be anything in this case, because I'm really just searching for if state equals selected, include it, and if not, don't. So that's kind of how that part of it works. So what it comes down to is I'm taking an array of all the cards, and then I'm taking an array of just the selected categories, and I'm running that filter action that Dorian built, and it's gonna output at the end of this filter action. I'm telling it to set the value into this main software list. And so I just basically set that up. If I didn't have to copy over the function because it was in a different environment, essentially all I'd have to do is import pattern, use this action. But I did a little more, but it wasn't worth showing. So essentially it's like dragging this action, adding transform data, which will be called Airtable filter by, on the real pattern. But add this transform data and set some stuff. And then the last step, I ran into a problem where I would filter. So I was originally pulling this list of cards as the starting array. I was pulling it directly from this list of cards. And so when it had them all viewable, that's fine. But if I clicked animation and then it filtered, when I clicked another filter, it was using a starting value that only included this one card. So none of the other filters would work. So I just had to do a quick modification where before I run this action, I do a condition where I check if there's a variable called all software on the page. And if there's not, so here I'm checking if current page all software length. I know all software is an array, so I use length in this case. There's a couple ways you can check if it exists. I said if current page all software length is less than 1, which means it doesn't exist, create a main software list variable. And this is just a separate action, so it's in here. And this action just sets a variable of these cards, of this main software list. So what that means is that when I run the filter action, if there's not a variable set for like the master or the main list, if that variable is not set, then create it and then do that transform data. And instead of pulling directly from these cards, I pull from a variable that we just created. So the starting array is current page variable all software. And so what that does is even after this is filtered and it's only showing animation, if I filter again, it checks for this variable. Now the variable does already exist, so it doesn't need to create it. And then this one will just use that original variable. So that's just a small tweak, but what that ends up in is now all the filters work. And so this is pretty much exactly how the original no-code list, the live no-code list is function-wise. The only difference is that lag when we unselect all the filters and have to pull them back in, which is a very specific problem that I'll address later. So that works, and the search already worked. So we're good there. And then, so what I was thinking today, besides showing that, the next steps, the next choices are finish out a couple details on the homepage, very minor stuff, which we can do at any point. Or go into this new single page that we started last time and start to lay it out. And so I gave some thought to what should go on these pages, and what they should look like. And we can start laying this out too. The one thing I realized here is that the next step will be to pull in like endorsements, which are the comments, or to, to pull in stuff like that. And I actually want to switch endorsements to be native builder data in this version. So instead of jumping in and like pulling these from Airtable and designing it up, which was my plan, it might make sense to instead start building out the collection for comments. The only thing is, before I do that collection, I want to do the users. So there's this whole chain because the users are tied to the comments. So I'm really not totally sure. I came into this unsure what I would build besides showing those categories, but we need to pick something there. And then I think there might have been one other thing. Maybe it was just the footer. So there's a couple areas. Oh, the last thing I was going to say is that because software page is built up now and all the main functionality is in place, I'd be confident to move into like a resources and agencies and a stacks page, which will be separate pages, but almost duplicates that homepage. And on the real no code, this is like kind of a side note, but on the real no code list, they're all run off of one page, and it like changes things in variables to display the different lists. I'm changing that for the builder version, and I'm going to purposely make them separate pages. And what that is, the reason that's interesting is because in code, it almost always makes sense to be more efficient, because on the live no code list site, I'm running in code, so I only have to maintain one page, and that's very efficient for me. But in builder, so the trade-off is that one page is complex because it's doing a lot of switching and conditions, and it's complex. It's harder to work in, but it's one page, so it's better. In builder, it's that factor doesn't exist, so having it on separate pages is equally as easy for me to update. Like, they're all just sitting next to each other in a canvas. Some of them share actions even, and I just like bam, 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 make the updates. So I found that in builder, I almost always am like separating things out and doing more, being simpler, putting things together in a simpler way. And it's just as easy to work in because we're using a tool that does that heavy lifting code end for us. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create separate pages for each of these pages. And then that way it's kind of cool because I can create separate cards. So it's like I have a page for the home page, and then I have this card page for the home page. I could create separate cards for each, do separate actions on each. So I'm looking forward to the flexibility, because the way it's currently, the current live site's a little limiting actually. So what to do? So I think maybe I'm going to actually do a couple quick things on the homepage while I figure out what the best move next is. But at the very least, on this single tool page, we can like clean up so this image isn't crazy and clean up some of this stuff that's there. So that'll be something, and maybe that'll even take us to the end of the hour. The things I want to do on the homepage, I could do these now, I could do these later. It doesn't really matter. So let's just tackle them really quick. One is on the categories. I want to have something that says they're loading. So when you first come to this page, the categories don't load until after all the Airtable data loads, and the Airtable has to make it. Airtable will only give you 100 records at a time. So the Airtable is making like 3 or 4 calls. I guess in this case, 3 calls. So it takes a minute for the categories to pop in, and it looks weird. And on the live site, something similar happens to that. And it has a thing here that just says loading. So it just says loading before it loads. So I'm just going to basically mirror that. I could do obviously any number of things. And the thing I was talking about before with placeholders, like I could have bars in here as placeholders. But I think in this case, I'll just keep it simple. And the way I'm going to do that, you can do that in so many ways in Builder, something like this, a loading screen. The way I'm going to do it here, I'm just going to stick a text box into this section here, like above the this list that just says loading. And then in the action where we're creating the categories, when it finishes and loads them in, I'm just going to hide that new text element. So it's pretty straightforward. So I'll grab a text box and put it right here. And the display text was just loading with dots. and I'll keep it a P, and that'll just stay there. And then just to be extra clear, this doesn't matter. So this says category name 3. Oh, you know what? It doesn't say it in live. That's why. This could default to something. This could have some default categories in. And I was going to say, we'll make sure they're cleared out. But actually, I'm pretty sure they already are cleared out. Yeah, default data is blank. It's just showing these 3 as studio data, which is data to display in editor. And that's just so it's easier to test as you're working. So we've got loading here. I should put the same treatment on here. So this category name has nothing except margin 0. It looks different to me. Oh, because I have to remove the text box class. So because the text box comes with a default class and these category names don't have it, I'm just going to remove it. No, it looks good. It matches. And that put a little margin bottom, but I don't care about that. That's fine. So that is there now. And when the page loads, that'll be visible. And then on this create categories action, this fires after the Airtable data is all done loading. It fires create categories, and then it looks at these cards and uses JavaScript to create these categories. That way you're not doing a separate API call. So at this point, this will be fast. So I can just do an action after this or before this to hide the loading. I'll do it after, but I'm not going to put a wait and see what happens. And I think it should be good. I think they'll basically fire at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do hide completely, element hide completely. And all I have to do there is choose that loading element. Section main loading. So I think that should be good. If it hides the loading too early, I'll pop this wait onto here and then I know we'll be good. So let's give it a shot. It's good it's slow in this case because we can really see the loading. All right, so it says loading. Goes away kind of early, I think, and then those pop in. So what I can do is I can put a wait on here. So when this finishes and when it actually populates the categories, then we remove loading. And I mean, it's not a huge deal, but it'll probably look a little nicer. Still seems kind of early, but it's also really slow. Either way, that's better. That's really what I wanted, is just something that said loading. I don't mind if there's a little freeze in there. I think all that stuff's going to change. Actually, I can probably show it, but when there's not 300 records in here, it behaves much differently. And this is kind of cool too, general builder thing to show off. These lists of cards and lists of rows, which are like grid elements, they have a bunch of properties, and one of the things they can do is you can limit how many rows they show, and then they automatically get a show more link. And so you can like set the text for what that link is and give it a style. And then when you click it, it'll load more in. So it's kind of like and there's an auto show on scroll. Like if you're scrolling, it can, load them in. So I think that those are really helpful because this kind of pattern, this functionality is pretty common. And so those are in there. And I'm not using them right now, but I could use them. So like I'll limit this to 10 just to really show us, but rows to display 10, it'll display only 10 of these cards, but it has them all loaded in. So it'll have a show more link. And if I click it, it'll just work. But I think that by having only 10 rendered on the screen, things are going to go faster too. Like even that, see how fast I loaded in. So I think it's definitely the amount of elements I'm loading that is causing the slowness, not builder. But either way, I'm going to investigate because I've said this like the last 3 times it's been running slow. So yeah, so there's those 10, and this, like I didn't format it or anything, but there's like a show more link that if I click would load the next 10. So I might actually do something like that for the live version. I don't know, but I think instead I'll just do like subcategories on the homepage and limit it that way. And then when you click a category, it'll do a new page where it shows you just that category. It'll never show all, but I could instead do something like this. But anyway, the point of that was to show that it's faster to load. And then I think when I filter these categories, it'll be faster to paint it back in. Ooh, that was kind of, oh, that animation might not be visible. But yeah, it's faster for sure to paint it back in. So I think that is my answer most likely. Anyway, for now, because I'm not messing with that yet, I'm just gonna take that off. And actually, you know what I could do is just for testing, because it doesn't matter, I don't need to see all those records. I can set this to like 100 or something just while I'm testing. 100 might be too many, but we'll see. Yeah, it's pretty good. That way it'll load just a little faster because of that. All right, so let's see. Another thing, so the point of what we did was categories loading, then I went off on a tangent. The next thing I wanted to do, which I just forgot to do, was add this little icon up here. I don't know why, but I do like it. And there's not very much visually on the site, so it makes sense to keep that. And this is an image. It looks like an emoji. It's made from that emoji, but it's actually different. The tools are tilted a little more. But I'm just going to download the existing one from the website. And then come into the menu in here. Just going to zoom out a second. Where'd it go? Come into the menu in here and just add in a menu option for that. So we have these menu options and they have properties on them. If we set this up before, a menu option class. So I'll just duplicate one of these. Man, it's going slow. It's frozen up again. All right. And I'm going to remove the actions from this duplicated. That was for the membership drop down. It had those hover and mouse leave actions. And then I can delete the actual drop down out of there. And actually, this doesn't need to be a link. So let me see what the style is. Link no code list. So I'm going to set this in here. Actually, I'll keep it as a link. I'll just make sure it doesn't have an href. So the display, oh, I'm sorry. It's got to be this image. I'm thinking. So let's add an image. And then I'm just going to upload that image I just downloaded. This is wild. I apologize for the slowness. As I'm talking though, I'm definitely chalking it up to the live streaming because it definitely was not this slow for me when I was doing that action and stuff. And then after I do this, I think I'm going to do the footer really quickly. So if I can get in here, go to the image. All right. Here's that icon and select it. And it looks like it's displayed twice there. That's because we're seeing it on the header component, but also that homepage includes the header component, so it's showing it twice. So this has the width set by default to 400, which I'm going to remove, which essentially I think makes the width, because this is an SVG, I think it makes the width like either 100% or maybe whatever if the default SVG has a default width. But I know that I want it to be tiny like an icon. So I can inspect on this page to find out how big it is. Width 2M. And then just make that in here. I'll just do an inline style. I'll show you the all props version. Size, width 2M. And so that's there. And then you can see on the screen down here. Oh, never mind. That didn't go in the wrong order. I just need to delete this. All right, so perfect. I might have to add that vertical line middle. Let's find out. That was the other property I had besides width. It looks like, well, it looks like I'd have to add it, but it might not work in this case because it's a different setup. But basically, I just need to move that up a little bit. So if vertical line middle doesn't work, I'll just do it like a hacky way. Here's another way enter styles with this used props where if you know the style you want, go like that. And the reason I don't think this is going to work is because there's containers around these elements now, whereas in the live version, these were like individual elements. So they could be vertical and middle to each other. But this one's not like that. Oh, this is Flexbox. So I think I should be able to do align items. And that was just a Flexbox property. I could barely remember it, but actually looks kind of like it's lined up baseline there. But I think that's what I wanted. I bet I bet that's something on here as margin and it's a little offline and I can fix it. The thing is like the OCD in me doesn't want to just slap something on there, but I could add like a transform, 25% probably. Transform, translate Y 25% as a property in there and it would fix it. But I kind of do want to find out what's going on. So I'm just going to click on it a couple times and if it's too hard, we'll skip it. But this has nothing width to, I wonder if I have to set a height. I don't know. Oh, actually, it looks like exactly like it does in the live site. So I don't know. Maybe that's as good as I can get it there. I could make that visually centered, but maybe that's what I intended. I'm going to leave it because it looks like the live site. That's fine. And actually, I'm going to remove that height just in case. All right, so that, and then, yeah, like a footer. Because right now I just have the word footer, but on the live site, I've got some stuff down here, including, so actually the footer will take a little longer. Ooh, that's MailChimp. So maybe I'll do in between, before the next live stream, I'll make a MailChimp subscribe element or action because I need to make it anyway. And then show how to import that as a pattern, show how to use it, etc. That'll be pretty cool. But for now, I'll just make this. I'll probably skip the input because I'll put that in later, but I'll just put the text in and put this around. So we do that on, I already created this footer component because it's on the single tool page it's in there and on the home page it's in there. But there's nothing on it. So the first thing that I'll do is my normal section component setup, where I start with a section. Oh, sorry, not component, container. Start with a section and then put a container inside of it. And the section, I remove builder's default stuff. And for this project, the section gets section no code list class. And the container gets remove what's on there, and then it gets container no code list. And the reason for that is I have that full width section and then the centered column instead. And when I do responsive, it's on these classes and it goes site wide. Went over that a couple times, so just reiterating, that's why I have that set up. And then any content that I put on the page, I would put into that container. So in this case, all it's going to do is take footer from being down here on the outside to like lining up, but I'll show it nonetheless. And then I just filter so that the page is smaller. So yeah, you can see footer is there now. And then what I can do, I think I probably did this on header. So I have a section no code list, and then when it's the header, I have a utility class of section. So I'll do that same setup where I have section no code list, and then here I'll do one for footer. And so like for one thing, I noticed right away there's a text line center. I'm gonna go to typography. Sorry, it takes me a second because I don't usually know. Okay. I don't usually know where they are in this full properties view. So text align center, and then let's just see if I have anything. I doubt there's even anything else in there. There's probably like some padding. I have like weird negative margins because I'm doing weird stuff. And then yeah, padding left and right of 4. Although it looks like there's padding bottom and top of 4 too. Oh, it's display flex. So there's a lot of stuff on here that I just probably don't need. But for M, at least I know what that padding is, and looks like it's the same all around. Oh, it's not the same, but it's close. So I'm just gonna do 4M padding all around. And then just gonna start popping this info in. So there's kind of like I would call this a heading. It's probably like an H4 or something, or an H3. It's an H3. And then a paragraph, then this thing will skip, and then a logo. We'll do this for now. So we'll do a heading. We'll make an H3, and it says no code software in your inbox. And then we can do a paragraph. And this one says 4 new tools per week, which is kind of a lie because I've had no time lately. I've been doing like every other week. But I need to get back on it because the waiting list is growing again. It was winding down. It was taking 3 months from when you submit to when you go live. I had it down to like a month and a half probably, and now it's just skyrocketed again. There's a lot of submissions lately. So this email thing, I'm going to put a container in it, give it some margin on the bottom, and then add an image for the logo. So I'll go container. And then I just remove this default. And then there's like, I don't know what this value is yet, but it looked kind of similar to that padding. So I'll say 4M. I don't think that was enough. And then an image for the logo. I should already have that in here, so I can just grab it. Yep. And then that image, I'm guessing, has something to limit the size. Max width 250. So I never use this default width. I use styles. So I'll come in here and in inline styles, just do max width 250. And then this, that's a link with an image. I'll just do it as a regular link, and I'll put a span of the image. Actually, let me see if I can save this. Oh man, this is a weird setup. FA Twitter. Oh, so it looks like what I'm doing is using a font that has a Twitter icon, and I'm setting a before pseudo selector, pseudo state on this link with that exact value for that Twitter. So I won't do that for this one. I'll just pull in a SVG of a Twitter logo. But we have link, put in a container to get both those, and then link, paragraph, link. Okay, so I'm just gonna do like this. Basically what I'm doing is if two elements are going side by side, I'm going to put a container around them. Pretty arbitrary setup. You can do these things like however you want. But this would be the, well, I can just put it in as I talk. This would be the Twitter logo and then a link, you know, and they're on one line. And then I would do another container for the next line. Whoops. And then remove this. And so the next line was a link, a text box, and then a link. And so I can zoom in. You can see on here how it's just stacking these. I'm going to fill them out for now and then unstack them in a second. So we've got TrueDrewCo, that link, this text, and this text. So TrueDrewCo. About. And then last thing on there is a little copyright message, which is just a paragraph element with, it'll have a class on it, which we didn't make yet. But for now, I'll just pop this paragraph in. Okay, so that's all there. And then all we have to do is unstack some of these and set these links. So the first, oh, and do that Twitter icon with that last. The first one, this TrueDrew link, I'm just going to fill out the link, which is just my Twitter. And do this in a new window, blank target. About, I didn't make this page yet, but I know it's going to be /about, and I want that to open in the same browser window. And then sponsor is a link to a Notion page. So I'll just copy that. And I guess I'll do that in a new page. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Ooh, should I do it this way still? I'll do that on its own page. I forgot that opens a page that redirects to the sponsorship Notion page, just so that I could track if there's page visits to it. So I might not keep that, but I'll just leave this out for now. I'll figure out what I want to do with that later. And then I don't need to unstack that yet. I can unstack these. So normally if I have two elements and I want to put them side by side, I change the container to display flex or display grid. In this case, these are just text elements, and I can probably just make sure they're all inline. So these links are probably already inline, and this P is probably block level. So if I change this P to a span, it won't be block level. And then they pop in there. And then this actually might not work for responsive, so we'll check it out. But basically, I'll just keep that inline instead of block, and then add margin left and margin right. And maybe do, I'm not actually sure what the spacing would even be. Let me see what 10 pixels looks like. It's probably less than that in real life. Maybe not. So probably about that. And then let's add a quick class to this, which, oh, I have to take off all these overrides too. So if you remember, every time I was adding, excuse me, every time I was adding an element, I was removing the default class and reselecting like one I made. So heading, instead of heading, it's heading no code list, which you could do it that way, or you could just make changes to the heading class. I just did it in this way where I was keeping all the defaults preserved. If I would have done it the way where I changed the heading class, I would never have to care. I would just pop elements in. Because I did it this way, I just have to go remember to put these like custom classes on here. And really most of what they do is remove the fonts, because these default classes have fonts and sizes set. In the future, they won't, as far as I understand. A lot of those default decisions are going to be going away. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's because of the menu. I'm going to keep this one as link for now. We have to change that class too. And then this one, I'm going to give it that new no code list class. This is the copyright info, but I'm going to also do a new utility class. Just call it copyright info. And then this, I'm just going to copy these styles. It looks like it's a little smaller and gray, or maybe see-through. Yeah, just smaller and gray. So I'm just going to copy that CSS, come into this copyright info, and I could, you know, choose them here or choose them here and set the values, but I'll just go right into the CSS, paste. Oops. Good to go. And I think there's some spacing stuff in here too, probably, but that's good. That's most of the footer. And so let's make sure it looks good here. And then I think we'll be in good shape. I don't really have like a Twitter icon prepared. Like I know I have a million on my computer, but I'll just find that and be ready for that next time. So let's see. What's a small one? Code. Nice. So it looks like all we have to do is I'll do that link. I can make that link class even right now. And then there's some spacing, the Twitter icon, and then which I'll have next time ready. And then I'll have next time ready a subscribe to MailChimp form, which essentially what I'm doing, I've done this with a bunch of things now, is I'll just take the MailChimp API, the way that you add, and wrap it into like a kind of like a standardized builder form, or a builder action in this case, so that when you click that button, it reads whatever's in the input and like runs to the MailChimp API. And it's pretty straightforward to do that because I've built a couple of them now. And like if this were MailerLite, for instance, I just built that the other day, like I'll just use it. But I won't actually show how to build all that because I'm really just going to copy paste. And in the real world, most of these will be built and you'll be like, okay, what email provider do I use? You can search for a pattern for it and then just use it. So yeah, so I'll do that next time, and that's there. Let's see. So I got like 10 minutes on the hour left in the hour. The one last thing I'll do today is I'll style these drop downs a little bit because they're a little wonky, but that's about it. But I think then the homepage will be really cleaned up, and then we can move into these single pages for next time. And what I'll do is by the time I stream, I'll figure out if I want to start with users, which could be pretty exciting. Do like not just the users, like the users table is built by default, but there's a lot of stuff built around it. So I set that up, but I'd be doing like the sign in stuff. So there's sign in, sign ups, there's magic links, there's passwords. I can do all of those things. So it'll be a pretty big undertaking, but it'll be a fun one. So maybe I can do that first and then continue building out the rest. Otherwise, what I would do is build out the comments and stuff and kind of like leave a space for user ID, like leave it blank, which I don't want to do. So that could be cool. I'll decide by next time and maybe we'll do that. But to finish off today, basically just going to set 2 styles on here and call it a day. So I noticed with these drop downs, first of all, they look like they're not all aligned to the right. The reason it looks like that is because the width of that drop down is too small. So fixing the width might just fix that alignment. And then this one going on 2 lines is also because the width of the drop down is too small. So I'm just going to fix those. But what I want them to look like is so then I also the left line it. So I want them to look like this live site, which they're pretty close. And then the last thing is the space between run and enterprise is a margin. And when you're coming down here, you like lose it. Actually, I'm losing it on run. So I have to figure out why I'm losing, I'm hovering off that drop down. And I'm guessing now that I look at it, I thought it was because of the space, but really I'm guessing that if you imagine a full vertical or a full horizontal line around this search tools like section, right as my mouse gets into that, I bet this section is covering this drop down. So if you imagine, I have no idea how to show it, but if you imagine a line coming right across here, right about here is where that section would overlap the drop down, and right about there is where it scrolls up. So that's probably what's happening. So I'll fix that quick. So those, whoops, are in the header component. And right now they're hidden, but inside of menu options, some of them have this menu option drop down, which we set up a couple times ago. And so menu option drop down has a class, has a class that styles it and then a class that hides it in this case. So this class that styles it, the first thing that'll do is text align left because it was text align right by default from these menu options, I'm sure. So text align left. I thought it would just update live. And then same place, I'll probably just put a width of like 200% or something. I'll show you why. So, okay, left line worked. And actually that kind of fixed the width issue on that anyway. But basically, the width of this part that slides down is as wide as the word that I'm hovering over. So in this case, the word software, and in this case, the word membership. And so if you have enterprise, which is one word, it doesn't break. It'll just go outside. It goes a little bit outside of the end of software. But if you have multiple words like membership, they'll word break. The word will wrap to the next line. So so instead of doing anything crazy in there, I'm just gonna this width is defaulting to 100% of its parent. I'm just gonna say like 150% maybe, and it's position absolute, so it shouldn't really matter. It shouldn't do anything. It should just be a little wider. And I don't think there's any width specified. Width is 100% specified. So let's change that width to 150. And it's starting as left 0, so I know it's starting on that left side. So this will probably be all we need. And that's kind of like a hack. You know, if you had dynamic options in there and you didn't know how wide they were going to be, you might have to do something differently. But I know what these options are, and I know 150 is probably wide enough, and it is. So yeah, so that pretty much takes care of everything I want to do there. And then let's just check this Z index or whatever. So one thing I can do, I can show this, I can demonstrate this by adding a quick background in here on this section. And this will basically just prove whether this is the problem or not. Kind of looks cool. I love these basic primary colors. All right, so that's what I was meaning before when I was saying this section goes all the way across. Now, if this is open, I'm guessing that as soon as I slide into here, yep. So it's when I hover over this search bar section, it's running like a mouse leave. It's running a hover off of this menu option. So what I have to do is I have to make the Z index, like the layer of this menu option, higher, closer to my face, and the search tools further from my face, if that makes sense, the way they stack. That way, when my mouse is over this menu option and I come over the search, the menu option's over top of it and never fires that mouse leave. So what I can do real quick, I'm just going to check. I mean, this is just a section, so this actually has nothing in it. So I think that it's going to have to be on this drop down in here. And we'll do menu drop down. It already has the position absolute. So Z index you can use, but it requires a position for Z index to work. So it's got position absolute on it and no Z index. So I'm going to add this property. Again, just like this is HTML, not builder specific, but Z-index comes up a lot, especially with absolute position stuff. And you can use any value in here. The higher the number, the way I describe it, I don't know if it makes sense to other people, but the higher the number, the closer it is to your face. Because it's kind of like if you think of layers like in Photoshop, where things are stacked on top of each other, which you don't think of it that much in the web except with Z-index. So that's kind of what it is. And you can just do super high numbers. There's probably a limit, but you can go pretty much infinity. So in this case, what I do is I think about it. I'm like, okay, this drop down, like a majority of the time, I want it to be over other stuff. Like I can feel safe giving it a high Z index because there's nothing that's going to need to cover it that I can think of. And if there is, I change it later. But so I might come in here and try like 200 because I know nothing else is going to be that high. But if this were an existing project with a lot of people working on it, 200 might not be high enough. You know, somebody else might have 200 on some, you know, whatever. So you can do any, like I could just go like this if I wanted to be on top of everything. I don't know, for whatever reason, I just keep it sane. So before I remove that blue, I'll keep it up there and we can just try this out and see if it works. Oh, you know what? This might also make the link itself unclickable, but we'll see. Nice. So that works to keep it up. And I wonder, oh, it's still clickable. Yeah. All right, so we're good. So this should be good, all good. So let me just remove the blue here, and then I think that's good for today. Come on. And yeah, and then we'll start in on some of the other stuff. I just have to make a few decisions, and I'll choose by that time. I really just don't know what the best move is. Right now I'm just testing this for no reason. That was very minor. I know this will work, but I'm just gonna make sure it works and then sign off. All right. All right. Cool. All right, so that's it. Thanks so much again for watching. And yeah, I'll send you an email. If you're not signed up to get those emails, you can sign up the link that's in that black bar at the top of the screen. Otherwise, follow me on Twitter. And I think almost every time, I try to post there right before I go live and make sure people know. Thanks again for watching. See you on Monday.